and welcome to Sip Sip Hooray, the podcast that is obsessive about wine, but also obsessively fun. Today, you are in luck. We've got someone super obsessed with wine, so much so that he's created a series of documentaries and other film series around the subject of wine and sommeliers. We're talking about Jason Wise, the director, producer, best known for SOMM. I am one of the two Marys hosting this podcast. I'm Mary Orlin.
And I'm Mary Babbitt. And we are so delighted to have Jason Wise with us. As Mary Orlin mentioned, he's a filmmaker best known for the SOMM documentary series. And this 3-part series that he made, they are the most successful documentaries on iTunes, Netflix, and Hulu. And I'm sure many of our listeners are well aware of these wonderful films. Jason and his wife, Christina, now run SOMM TV, which is a streaming network for wine content. And they make the popular series on SOMM TV, Verticals, which profiles some of the most influential people in the wine world, opening some of their favorite vintages. So, Jason, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. You always seem to have a lot going on. So what are you in the middle of working on right now?
Oh, my God. How long is the podcast? First of all, an honor to be here, ladies. It really does mean a lot. Thank you for asking me to be on. Let me think. How do I even answer that question? So I have 7 feature films that I've directed coming in the next 9 or 10 months. Some of those, have taken years to make. I have 5 series for SOMM TV that I've directed in the works. I have, oh boy, I host a podcast. I have 2 children. It's all, there is no separation of work and wine and life. It's a lot of stuff.
Are you insane?
I am, clinically, yes. But I would say emotionally, I feel pretty stable.
Well, that's good. So you have a super full life. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, really, honest to God, if I was to really get into what's going on, oh my Lord, I would start having anxiety. But yeah, there's a lot going on.
No, we don't want to have that. Not on this show. So, first of all, a general question, because every film I've watched in the credits, it says Forgotten Man Films. And I'm curious, what does that stand for?
Forgotten Man Films. Okay, so that has been my production company since my senior thesis film I made at film school, which had to do with World War II. It was not about wine at all. It is a reference to one of my favorite movies that's ever made called My Man Godfrey. It was made in the 1930s, and it's a great kind of screwball comedy, but with a real biting social edge. And there's a scavenger hunt in the film, and these rich people have to find a forgotten man, which was slang for a homeless person at that time. And the person they find is the main character of the movie, named Godfrey, very famous actor. But Forgotten Man Films is a reference to that film, which I can't tell. If you've never seen My Man Godfrey, my God, are you in for a treat? It's one of the funniest movies ever made.
Wow. Okay. I love that tip. Thank you. I'm going to look for that. So can you back us up and tell us so you went to Chapman for film school. Mm-hmm. You didn't set out to make documentaries about the wine world or to make your name that way, but that's kind of what happened to you. Was it 2012?
Yeah, that sounds about right. So SOMM was sort of finished around 2011 and came out 2012 in theaters, if I have my dates right. It's been I've had some glasses between now and then, so I might be a little off. But so basically, I started off. I always did want to make documentaries, but not only. So I sort of thought I saw myself as prior to SOMM, most of my work was working with actors. My all the work I did in college obviously was with actors and on actual sets and things like that. And I got a job directing a travel show for PBS. And so while I was there, I ended up in, Fiji and French Polynesia and all over Chile and all over Europe. Many trips back and forth to France and Italy. So I was in all of these incredible wine regions, and it was focused on luxury restaurants and hotel properties. And so I had a very lucky, immersive experience into that type of world. And, I'm also obsessed with history. And if you watch my films, I think that is moderately apparent that I keep trying to skew them all towards historical films, whether everyone else wants that or not. And I was trying to get together a film with actors that had to do with World War I. It took place in what is, the Champagne region. And so as I was trying to get this film off the ground, a fellow restaurant worker, because I was also bartending at this time, you'd be amazed to find out that documentary filmmaking and travel show directing does not pay incredibly. So I was also
It doesn't?
No, it does not. I would say this right now, and to any of you listening, which I doubt anyone is trying to become a documentarian, but if you are, consider something else if you actually want to make money. So anyways, I basically, a friend of mine in the restaurant business, whose name is Brian McClintock, him and I just knew each other in passing, was going through that Court of Master Sommeliers process at the early stages. And I went and saw him take a practice exam type thing. And I sort of couldn't believe it. I played sports in high school and college, and I saw this very sports mentality competition type thing and sort of applied that to a film and just started filming it. And before I knew it, I was making a documentary. That's sort of how it all started.
I think it's interesting that you said it seemed very sports-like, because the conditioning, if you will, the training that goes into becoming a sommelier, especially at the master level, is so intense. It's like being a professional elite athlete.
Yeah, it is. It's funny when that film came out. So you have to understand, like, making that was my first feature film. It was my first film of any length. It was my first commercial project. And so, we made it for a very small amount of money. And so it's easy for me to look back at it and have a different opinion about what it's about and all the people that are in it. But when we made it, understand my background in wine. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, which is not, I don't think, known for its wine culture. My background in wine was as a bartender, bartending my way through film school and, that kind of thing. So I sold wine to some extent, but I was mostly, more knowledgeable in cocktails and spirits and things like that. And so what happened was I took an approach to this where I saw a bunch of mostly guys ragging on each other and goofing around and doing all these things. And I sort of looked at it the way I saw, a tennis team or a baseball team or a football team or something like that, where you have these people, pushing each other to succeed, but also giving each other a hard time, mostly good-natured. And it's weird to think back that way because when the film came out, there were so many news outlets that were sports focused that named it one of the year's best sports films, which was an odd thing to see.
Well, that's a credit to you and the excitement that you brought to it in the film, because Mary Orlin and I making in wine country, one of the things we always struggled with was you can't taste the wine on TV or in a film. You can't, it's a sensory thing and you miss a lot of it when you're not the one actually sipping it. So that you're able to bring that sort of sports excitement and thrill, the agony of the studying and the getting, are you getting it right? Are you getting it wrong? And are you going to pass or not? And I think that that's a credit to your ability as a storyteller.
Well, I really appreciate that. I mean, I think I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I think that's a lot of the reason why it worked, honestly.
Well, what you've done is also you pulled back the curtain on what has been traditionally such a secretive society. And there are...
Isn't that strange to say, though? Like, that this group of wine people, when I walked in, I didn't understand what I now know. And so it's funny that even that sentence you say, Mary, is like so funny to think about. A secret society in wine. How weird is that?
Right? It's weird.
It is weird, but there's so much that we don't know. I mean, you couldn't actually go in and film the exams or the things that happen behind closed doors. So there's still that mystery and secrecy.
Yeah, well, I had a lot of audience members who, I would say 99.9% of the audience for SOMM, because it was a film that was at the right time and it sort of hit the zeitgeist. They were very upset about that. People were very upset. How come I don't get to see the exam? And what they don't understand is I couldn't. They wouldn't let me in. I would, the court itself was not the easiest organization to deal with. I mean, and that's an understatement. And so, it was one of these things where, but truthfully, honestly, if you do know the court, the interesting stuff is around the practicing. It's not the actual exam. It would have been pretty straightforward and might have been kind of boring, actually, if we were able to film it. So I think it worked out story-wise, actually, to the advantage. But yeah, that was out of my control.
Sure.
Well, you've continued your interest in wine has only seemed to have grown since then. Is this still an obsession for you? That was 2011, you said you started. So are you still just as interested? You certainly must know a lot more now about wine. Could you be a
Sure.
sommelier yourself?
No, definitely not. I wear the fact that I am not a sommelier, nor, Jancis Robinson always says something amazing to me. She's, she was in our third film, and she's somebody I idolize and look up to so much. And she always says, I'm not in the wine business at all. I'm not. I write about wine, but I'm not in the business. I don't take money from people. I write about it. I do some reviews, but I'm separate. And I've always kind of, hearing her talk that way makes me feel a little bit of pride that I'm in a similar situation. But every single time I make another project or I meet another winemaker, I realize how much I don't know. It is, as you both know, probably even more than me, it is a wonderful, incredible bottomless pit that keeps changing, and there's so many ways to go at it. And for me, hopefully we get a chance to talk about the next 3 SOMM films, which are mostly in the can, believe it or not. I believe wine is a vessel for stories. And I say this not as a cliche, but I say it as an actual, you can talk about religion, you can talk about war, you can talk about love, you can talk about, and wine is the thing at the table that sort of connects all of those things. And so I look at wine as it's not the thing. It's the thing that makes the thing. It's sort of like, it's step 1 that leads you to step 10. So I adore wine and I love it so much, but I love the people and the stories and the history way more.
Absolutely.
Well, I think Mary Babbitt and I can both relate to that. And when we were doing our TV show, we had a segment called Behind the Label, and it really wasn't about the wine per se. It was really the story about the people who were making the wine and having our viewers get to know them outside of just being a winemaker.
Yeah.
Which leads me to the series that you've been doing. It's now in its 2nd season, called Verticals. And this is, to me, really intense storytelling focused on one particular winery. And you have developed a way to tell the story of the people behind those labels through 2 or 3 distinct bottles. Can you tell us how the idea came about and what your inspiration
Sure. I mean,
was?
if you've seen the second SOMM movie, Into the Bottle, that's a movie that we took sort of 10 stories about one story, and it goes back and forth between, the BS of wine and the beauty of it and the history of it and, some wars and I sort of wanted more. I wanted to be able to get deeper into individual producers. And also I wanted to be able to talk about some of the things around wine. Like, for instance, every episode it's about something else. Like Kathy Corrison's episode, who's a brilliant, brilliant Napa winemaker. Her wine is incredible. We try to choose winemakers where this story is amazing, but if you just had their wine without even knowing it, it's top notch, world class. Doesn't necessarily mean it's expensive, but that there's a great story behind it. And Kathy Corrison's in season 1 is about a woman who just refused to listen to the fact that it's difficult to be a woman in the wine business. She just didn't cross her mind, didn't care. She moved forward, she plowed ahead, and now she has all these young women, rightfully so, looking to her and thanking her for paving, a path for them, or whatever you want to call it. But Kathy that episode is about so much more than just the vines. It's about her perseverance and things which I don't think she thought much of, or I don't think she let it get in the way. And there's another episode that has to do with the United States and China and Nixon getting together and finally, the U.S. having a relationship with China. And we have an episode coming April 22nd in season 2 about Tara Gomez, who is a Chumash Native American, and she has done something with Quito wines and her label Camins to Dreams that just has never really been done in the United States. She has put Native people on the map with a wine that is stellar beyond this story and beyond anything else. And I'm like, I could get emotional talking about how much I love this. And then we have a very, well, I guess not so secret since I'm about to talk about it, project about the Rothschild family coming, which is a feature-length version of a Verticals episode. And it's the very first time the Rothschilds have ever allowed anybody to film their family, be a part of everything, and it talks about all their history with World War II. They open up, there's 4 bottles that could open up in the film, and it's a very deep, very personal look at a family that's been very private for quite a long time. And it's, you know, this gives us the opportunity to tell stories based on vintage and years and emotions and things like that. So it kind of came about as I wanted to go deeper. And I just believe there are stories out there that they may not seem commercial at first look, but they're so commercial and so inspiring. And I'm also, you know, I believe that it's time to start thinking about who gets to tell the stories in wine.
Yeah.
And not just think about it, but actually do it.
Do you find people are eager to tell you their stories? You know, you've had so many really luminary people on verticals, from, you know, Paul Draper, Molly Chapelet. There are just names in the wine world that are huge. Are they eager to tell you their story and to have this and to open some of their oldest vintages for you?
You know, it's strange. It's interesting because I look at this very much like running. Having to run, you wake up in the morning and you have to go running. It's very difficult. But once you have ran, you're sort of like, I'm glad I did that and it wasn't so hard. So my perspective on the answer is like, no, I don't think it was hard. But truthfully, gaining access to somebody is about trust and it's about perseverance. And I'll be honest with you, I can't think of a single time I've ever asked anybody to film where they don't say, at least I'm not sure about that first. And that's good because, to be truthful, you know, this is a thing where my name is on this, Christina's name is on this, Nadine Netman, who's our producer, is on this. We take this very seriously and we want it to be good. And so if people come with a little bit of apprehension, it means that they care about their story too. And so often, you know, and understand too, the other thing is we had to film a lot of these during COVID. So that was another incredibly difficult aspect of this.
Exactly. I was wondering about that, on the timing of some of it. And so tell us about those challenges and what kind of adjustments did you have to make production-wise in the field to get that done?
It was mostly adhering to proper, there's a lot of protocols, legal protocols, insurance protocols, but we are a very small crew and we work kind of swiftly. And I think that for the most part, not much changed other than it just took more pre-production. It took more time to convince people we were going to be safe, also that my crew was going to be safe, and I think it just took more thinking about how to approach it, how to film outside, you know, and a lot of these people, they're not young. They have, you know, part of what makes their stories interesting is that they have lived a long, full life, and so that also requires a lot of respect for their safety, and so I just think it took more time, but also there is a fact. Some of these people are older and we want to get their stories down. I'm not saying they're going to pass away soon, but it is one of these things that it's important to get their stories as soon as we possibly can. So,
well, there is some urgency to that for sure, because you never know. And as with someone who you've featured quite prominently in SOMM and Verticals, Stephen Spurrier, we lost him very unexpectedly.
Yeah. So Stephen is, it's crazy, but Stephen was an incredibly good friend of my family. I stayed at his house for a week with my crew. I have spent time with him in Virginia, in London several times, in New York City, in Napa many, many times. He's in so many of my projects coming up. This really hit us so hard, right in the gut. I mean, it's not, it is this was a very tough thing for us. And Stephen is a major character in the Judgment of Paris film we have coming, which has been years in the making. It involves every living, and now some that are not, person involved in that story. The Stephen thing, he's involved in The Cup of Salvation, which is a film that I have coming towards the end of this year about the origin of wine and religion. And it's a very, very, very challenging thing, but the truth is it just goes to show, him and Gerard Basset, those were two people who passed away that were unexpected, that I admired and were sort of mentors to me, and it goes to show you need to tell people how much you appreciate them as often as you can.
Oh, sure.
Oh,
I know. I loved the Verticals episode on Clodoval. I knew some of Bernard Prote's story, and we had met him. We shot a segment with him years ago for our TV show.
What a great guy.
Oh my gosh. And I was, it's like, I was wondering, is he still around? And I was so happy to see he's, thriving. And
as charming as ever. Wait till you see him in the Judgment of Paris film. The guy is the most charming. I mean, he is just a charming, wonderful sweetheart of a man.
Oh, that's so great. So
you mentioned these films, Judgment of Paris, Cup of Salvation. I think was there another one?
The Ghosts of Spring Mountain. So those are the 3 SOMM films coming.
Okay. And are these, you're making these along with your television series Verticals?
Oh, yeah.
Will these be on SOMM TV, or are you going to release them through something else, another?
No,
platform?
they will. So we made a difficult decision that SOMM TV is the home for all of this. Now, obviously, if theaters open back up properly, they will have theatrical releases as well. All of the SOMM movies and everything I've ever directed has gone to theaters. Not everything has been about wine, but everything has gone to theaters. We believe in the theatrical experience very strongly. But, they will go to SOMM TV, and it's important for us to reach the largest audience that cares, as quick as possible, and that's why we created SOMM TV, so we wouldn't have to pitch our projects to other networks, Netflix and Hulu, and we just felt we know we have an audience, and we don't want to waste time. We want to make them right now.
How do you go about starting your own network?
Oh God, how long do you have on the podcast? You have to be stupid, and you also have to have no backup plan, and you have to be incredibly lucky and be surrounded by very smart people. We did it because we have a very large library of content and also wanted to make a large amount of things. And so we didn't want to be beholden to others telling us if we could or could not do that. And so it's all friends and family money, and we jumped in deep into the pool. So
there is so much great content, and there's so much I have watched and I want to continue watching. So it seems like you also have content that's been created by other folks, not just your company. Is that true?
Yeah, it is true, but we have about 96%, I think was our last calculation, is all original, and you can't find it anywhere else.
Wow.
We have films like Bottle Shock, and films like the documentary about Rudy Kurniawan's
Sour Grapes.
Yeah, Sour Grapes, that's on there, and a number of other wine films that we do license, but we license films to create content around them. So, all sorts of things around wine counterfeiting. And obviously there's a live watch of Bottle Shock with Steven Spurrier that I did with him. And it's incredible when you find out what the true story is that he goes through with me. And, it's basically as a springboard into other things. If we had Sideways on, we would talk about the explosion of Pinot Noir and Merlot and what happened. And we would get deep with probably another 8 hours of content around Sideways versus Sideways being the, put it that way.
Sure. Well, what I have really enjoyed in watching, especially Verticals, is how you've been able to get folks to really tell their stories that probably haven't been heard publicly, and also how you were able to coax them to open up some of these very precious bottles that, I'm thinking of the Martinelli segment where the granddaughter and great-granddaughter are opening up the 1936, the oldest bottle they've ever had of their families. It's not even labeled. But I mean,
and that bottle, just for your audience, that bottle was, I can't even tell you how incredible it was. And the reason it was in such good shape is back then, just like in Burgundy, they added a little bit of, grappa or something to it to preserve it. And it really, all these really old wines, people always ask, how is it possible it's still drinkable? Well, that's the reason. They put a shot of grappa in there at the end.
Interesting. Well, and that leads me to so once those bottles were opened, did you get to taste them? Did you and your crew get to try the wine?
We drank every bit of it.
All right.
That's a nice perk, so
it's a perk.
You may not make money, but you get the wine. So, do you have some favorite interviews that you've done along the way?
I do. I'm so sorry about this, ladies. There is a leaf blower next to my office right now. Do you want me to hold for a second or just keep going? And I'll try to ride the mute button.
Just go for it. We're good.
Yeah.
I am truly so
now
sorry.
Everyone listening knows what they're hearing. The leaf blower. That's fine.
Oh my God. Oh my God. This is the life of working at home, but I will say it should be over so shortly. So
well, Jason, you probably encountered leaf blowers and planes and other noise while you were filming on location. I know we had the darndest time, with all that. We'd start filming, of course, Murphy's Law.
Yeah.
Something would start up, and we're like, okay.
A chipper, you name it.
Oh, you have no idea the stuff we've had to deal with, especially filming in wineries. You're like, why are they disking right now next to us?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, your question was? What are some of my favorite interviews?
Yeah, some people that you met that just they're either their stories or just their presence stayed with you.
Sure. All right. So there's several. I mean, this could be a long answer, and I'll try to condense it. Paul Draper over at Ridge Vineyards is somebody that I could just sit in the grass and listen to talk for 5 hours. The guy is a brilliant storyteller and a wonderful human. Somebody that, again, it's just like information and it just pours out of him. And he would be one. There's a woman named Jean Arnold Sessions who was...
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know Jean?
I love Jean. She's one of my favorite people.
She's in the Maya Comets verticals, but she's a big part of the Judgment of Paris documentary coming up. And
good.
Jean is one of those gentle souls who is just so lovely and filled with so much knowledge, and really just understates how important she was and is to the wine business. Aubert de Villaine over at Domaine Romanée-Conti is another person that I have really enjoyed being able to talk to and speak to throughout the years, and he's a part of our projects. There is somebody named Kelly White. She's a wine writer.
Yes,
who is
I know Kelly.
Yeah, Kelly's in tons of our stuff, and I've now engineered this whole thing so that I get to spend time with my friends. And so Kelly's a dear friend, and it's just the more I do this, the more I realize surrounding yourselves with the right people. They say casting is 80% of a film or a project, and they're right. And so I've been very lucky to film with these kind of titans, Warren Winiarski we filmed with recently for Judgment of Paris, but I've also been lucky to be kind of at the stage where people are at the beginning of their career and are going to change the industry for the next 30, 50 years. And I like being on both sides of that coin. And that I think is one of the most exciting things. Like Tessa Martinelli in the Martinelli episode is a brilliant young mother who is just hilarious and a great friend now. And it's just nice to be around both sides of that,
Absolutely. Oh, I love that you see it that way, because you're right. There's the next generation is coming up, and their stories are also interesting. One of the things I think is so fascinating about wine is that it's more than just a beverage. Obviously, it's this lifestyle thing. And, as an outsider looking in, it can be so seductive and enchanting. The wineries, the estates, it's very aspirational living. And as you got to meet these people and go to their lovely wineries and stuff, do you feel kind of sucked in by all of that?
I do. But I think that the wine business has a lot of pushing a picture and a narrative forward that's not reality too. Mm-hmm. And so I think I'm very lucky to see both the curtain, behind the curtain, and in front of the curtain. And it's hard for me as I move on. I'm not so interested in these giant, big, beautiful wineries. I'm interested in, the places that you can't get a tasting at, not because they don't have a tasting room or it's invite only, but because they just don't do them. There are wineries all over the world that are family run and all of these things, but the answer is so deeply yes. I find myself falling down the rabbit hole every day at work. Every day I want to make another film. I have 50 ideas, and it's all because there is just no end to the wealth of stories. There is none. It just keeps going.
It does. And, we would always be asked, aren't you going to run out of story ideas for your TV show? I'm like, that's not our problem. Our problem is there are so many stories we want to tell, and we just don't have enough time or resources to do it.
Right. Yeah, this is something that I deal with daily. And, the other problem with wine is in a lot of cases, these films, and we do a lot of food content as well. I have a couple feature films, 3 about food coming out, and 1 that I released this year about food, Sea Urchin Divers, or no, it was the beginning of last year, called The Delicacy, which is on very dangerous movie to make, all shot on film. I did all the underwater photography, but it's all of these particular things, they can take years to make. And so sometimes I get myself in bed with a story and I realize, oh my God, this is going to take me 3 years before it's ever done. And the developments that happen during that time influence the story. They change things. And I think there was this thought when I made SOMM 1 that, okay, so you're going to follow more sommeliers. And then when I came out with SOMM 2 and it was really about history and wine and everything else, people went, what the hell is this? And then it was more popular than the first one. Mm-hmm. And then the third one, again, was a totally different story. And the fourth, fifth, and sixth, which I cannot believe I just said out loud, that we're actually doing, I'm nuts, are all very different from each other. I mean, it's just, the stories are never ending. And I can totally agree with you ladies that there is no end.
Well, there must be a desire for people to see this. You wouldn't, if you didn't have an audience that these would play to, you wouldn't be doing this. So
yeah, who do you consider?
Yeah, well, my mom, my audience is my mother. She watches everything. And she has about 10,000 paid accounts that she pays for on her own. So who is the audience? That's a great question. I think what we are trying to do is redefine, because there is no genre of wine films. It's not like there's, it's not like the Western or the melodrama or the horror film where you're like, oh, and it always bothers me with documentaries that people go, oh, it's a documentary. Like there's not genres within documentary. And people seem to think that documentaries can only be about, somebody wrongfully imprisoned or environmental disasters. Mm-hmm. And the truth of the matter is documentaries can be stupid and fun and goofy, serious. They can be about anything. So I see genres within documentaries, but then I also see genres within culinary and food things. So let me give you an example. So we have the Judgment of Paris film coming out, which I'm assuming you can imagine what that's going to be about. But the next film coming out called The Ghost of Spring Mountain is legitimately a very scary film. I mean, it deals with some very scary supernatural things that have happened in 3 abandoned wineries that are in one place in Napa, and they're also the history of Napa. And it involves a Ouija board from the late 1800s, and it involves a lot of different things. And I think people will go, wait a minute, there can be a supernatural thriller that's a documentary that's about wine? And I'm going to go, yeah? Like, why not? I mean, yeah, right. It's going to be very creepy. We have some filming sequences coming up in May. I think a lot of people are a little concerned about doing, and that's what's going to make it so electric and fun. I always like this kind of stuff. And then the final, then the next one is literally about the origin of wine and religion, and we filmed all over the Middle East and in a cave in the Caucasus Mountains that is going to rewrite human history. And I'm not saying that with any hyperbole. Oh, absolutely. And then while we were filming, a war broke out between Armenia and Azerbaijan right in the middle of our production. And that is incorporated in the story, and we filmed in Argentina. And these movies and these stories, I find, I don't want to be bound by, the cliches, even ones that I've accidentally created. And I think that, I want to keep evolving these stories into different things and play with genre and do things that I don't think a lot of people would think to do because they're not crazy like me. And so, that's the fun of it.
So you're not following just the same formula over and over again. I love that. And so the answer to your question of the question, who's your audience? I think you're seeing anyone and everyone.
I think so.
Thriller movie fans.
I know. Doesn't that sound crazy? I know. I sound nuts. And I hope at least people will go, I got to see what the heck this thing's going to be. Yeah. But I truly do believe that what makes the best documentaries good is that they provide access to a world that you would never, either you didn't know it existed, or you didn't know somebody could show it to you, or it shows something in a whole new light. And that's the most important thing with our projects. Is my hope is, that you look at this and you go, I didn't know that this world even existed. I didn't know that these people were so charismatic. I didn't know, so in the end, it is entertainment, but I do hope that there's a fair amount of education involved as well.
Absolutely.
Jason, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was the year that we've endured with COVID-19, the people you've met along the way, the sommeliers you've gotten to know through your work. COVID-19 devastated the American restaurant industry. And
yes.
I guess these are some of your probably close friends now. What do you see as the future for sommeliers?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Well, I do want to say, so we have, it's kind of secret, but, a trailer's coming up very soon for a film called The Food Runner. And when COVID struck, and I mean literally shut down restaurants, we decided we were going to find a group of people and follow them through the entire process. And so we landed on Bobby Stuckey, who runs Frasca Food and Wine in Boulder. And we followed him for an entire year, every step of the way. It was some of the most difficult filming we've ever done because of the permits, the access, the danger. And at the very beginning of the days of COVID, nobody really knew how dangerous it was or what you could do. And this film, I think, is going to be incredible because it deals with him dealing with the Senate and other major chefs and trying to save restaurants. Not just his, he literally helped spearhead saverestaurants.org. And so most of it involves talking to senators and Congress, and it's a wild film that I don't think anyone else did. We were the only ones that were crazy enough to throw ourselves into the ocean of that. And so I think that some of the answers will be shown in that film.
Yeah.
Here's my answer to the future sommeliers. I think the most important thing is to define what a sommelier is, and most of them can't even do that. So I would say sommeliers are curators. I don't believe they need to work in a restaurant, though most of them think that that's the only way they can call themselves one. I personally believe the sommelier profession itself is going to get redefined. I think, especially when it comes to gender and inclusion and skin color and things that are really important. I think COVID is going to be a really great kick in the ass for the industry so that the right voices can now be in the position.
Right.
And that's one thing for the future. But the other is I do think restaurants will come back. I pray to God that they're not all just going to be huge companies that could weather this and that swallow up all the little guys.
Yeah.
But I do believe the profession's going to be okay in a standpoint that it will be redefined. But I do think it's an incredibly necessary position in a restaurant or a distributor, someone who can curate. It's so important.
That's true. But to follow up on the redefining the profession or what a sommelier is, it's been a challenging year, not just because of COVID, but with all the other controversies that have come up, the cheating on the master sommelier exams, and unfortunately the accusations or raised of sexual harassment by several master sommeliers. Some who have appeared in your films, and I'm wondering your response to that and what you see as where the industry might be going as a result of that.
Well, I think you hit on something early about this being this kind of secret society. Understand, I think there's some misconceptions about SOMM and my involvement with the court, and they have never had any say in what the actual product has been. It's not like, they didn't pay us to make SOMM. In fact, working with them was, and this is not their fault. Well, kind of. It was a pain in the ass. As an access, working with the court was downright awful, and mostly because they'd give me access, they'd rip it away. They'd promise me I could film something, and then they'd take it away. And it was like, I'm glad there weren't roofs around me high enough to jump off of because I would have. But, the fact that when you say this secret society, I think that's the problem.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a huge problem. And it's a huge problem in not just wine or restaurants. When you have people who don't have the visibility to understand why things happen, it leads to people who have a false sense of authority. And that's not fair. And, when I'm not trying to say how an organization should run themselves because, that's not my thing, but I will say I got thrown into this by documenting them and having an association that when these articles came out, the cheating thing, I just want to say one thing. Thank God I was not filming during this and I had nothing, it'd been years. Some of these people, I don't want to call them out by name, but are dear friends of mine who lost their accreditation in that thing. A nightmare. Jill Zamorsky is a cast member for SOMM TV. She has a show. She hosts her own podcast reviewing wine books for us. And she took the test twice. She lost her thing in it and then decided she's one of the few people that's passed the master exam 2 times. And she decided to take it again and do change from within. And I applaud her every day for that. But she's a tough cookie and doesn't take any crap from anybody.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more that were dear friends of mine. And it's heartbreaking that they went through this. But I got to watch that as an outsider. But when it comes to the New York Times article that Julia wrote and all the other articles that subsequently came out, I can't overemphasize the disgust that I have for, it's so easy to say, I didn't know. It's so easy for anybody to say that. And there's truth to that, but it doesn't excuse anything. And there are a lot of ways to look at this. One of the people named, I think the most egregious person, we had cut ties with for about 6 years due to some of the similar issues. But another person that's named in there was in SOMM 3. Fred was in SOMM 3 and SOMM 1 and all of these things. And I think it made me realize something that is really important. To get access to these people, I think there's a false sense that socially we were like best friends and hanging out at their houses, and that's really not the truth. But it did make me realize the responsibility we have had and have moving forward to understand the full circle of what's going on. And I think that when we read that article, I'm speaking for my entire team, top to bottom, we disgustingly didn't know that this stuff had happened, but we also weren't surprised. And that is the gross thing that I every time I say that out loud, I get sick because.
Well, I credit you for being willing to say it, for owning that piece of it, and you are not alone. There's a lot of people probably witnessed things that, in hindsight would just speak up.
Yep. But I think now bringing awareness to it, if you see something, you need to step in, you need to say something. And I hope that's where we're the path forward out of all this. And to bring diverse voices in, and also and tell me if you agree with this. I think for a long time, SOMMs have been placed up on this pedestal.
Yeah, and a lot of that, I'll be flat out honest. A lot of people blame our films for that, and it's an interesting thing because it's a double-edged sword. Sommeliers and SOMMs and people, it's not just wine. If you look at the restaurant business, there was, and I'm sure will continue to be, a large amount of stories coming out about people who were in positions of power and abused it in a myriad of ways. And it's not always just a sexual thing. It's not always, there's so many ways that this can happen. And the truth is I wrestle with this internally as a filmmaker. And I think, we definitely aided sommeliers being put up on a pedestal, but the inverse to that is now they can be looked at that way with the right people in that position. And it's not that it's so tough. And you see this in the film industry, you see this in every business where kind of an old guard and the people who have been there for a long time weren't paying attention to the waves of how things need to change. And I don't mean need to change just for arbitrary social reasons. I'm talking they need to change to make it better for things. The voices that I'm talking about that are coming in now, and I've always been there, by the way, people just haven't heard them, they make it better. They make it more interesting, and they make it more, there's a larger group of people to sell wine to. There's a larger group of people listening and hearing more voices. And there's such a positivity that goes beyond just the basic, which is, just the basic social elements, that it just makes this a better world anyway. Absolutely. And we wrestle with this often, and I think that it's so important to continuously talk, but also I think the thing that I want to do better is to listen. I really want to hear things better rather than just putting my head down and filming nonstop. I want to listen to what's actually happening before, during, and after we film, because there is no excuse for somebody who in a lot of cases is more talented just not getting the ability to take a shot at a job. It's just so stupid when you think about it logically, whether it's because they're a woman or because of their skin color or because of whatever. Those people are more talented and should have deserved to be able to have a shot at the job. And I just don't want to be a part of somebody feeling that they don't have a chance due to a film.
Sure.
Right.
You know, and I don't know that has happened. I'm not trying to say that there's any fault or that there's not, but this whole thing is just something that as documentarians, you're also showing what was there. And I think there's an importance to looking at SOMM and Into the Bottle and SOMM 3 and who knows, 4 years after I make these next films, it's important to look at them as a timepiece of what was actually there at the time too. And that's one way I think people can move forward, is to take a look at where it was. I mean, unfortunately, books and TV and media and those things, they are time stamps of what it was like. So,
Right. And as a lover of history, you want to tell those stories. And, but, it sounds also like so many of us were understanding how Access has written, who lives to tell the story. It's the people who had the access. And,
You're totally right. You are so right. And that's the other thing that's pretty neat with SOMM TV is that, this happens to be a women-led company. It happens to be, and I say it that way because the most talented people happen to have been women, and they happen to run the company and do it very well. But it also gives us an opportunity with so many movies, so many shows, to have more voices and to let more voices actually make the content. It's not just me. It's not just Christina. It's also new people telling their stories behind and in front of the camera. And that is something that I can't wait to keep growing and piling on top of, because it's really important.
That is exciting. And I do love seeing more and more voices, more and more stories. It's really unlimited. And I'm glad that there are finally channels for more of these stories to be told and to be heard.
Everyone's got a long ways to go. And I don't think something I'm learning, and I'm sure, again, this is, I'm a white guy having this conversation, but it's not like, oh, yay, we've accomplished it. It's just forever going to be something to keep working on. And there will be new things to work on later. It is important that anyone in a position of showing a world needs to understand that you have a lot of responsibility in doing that. And so I want to, accountability is important. And, I hope that these other organizations feel the need to be accountable for what their actions are.
Very true. And, we can all set examples by leading and doing that. And hopefully others will take notice.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to make it so heavy, ladies. I apologize.
No, that's all right.
You have so much on your plate, and we're so grateful for the time you've taken with us. Before we let you go, I just wanted to make a mention of the fact I love that you work with your wife on these projects, and tell me about the two roles you guys play in it. You're also parents of two daughters, and so you guys are really very, very busy, I would imagine. So tell me about Christina's role and versus yours.
Sure. So Christina is the story mind. She is a brilliant story mind, and she does all the story producing. She takes the chaos I bring back from set and organizes it into something that actually makes sense. So there's nothing of importance on the network or in our films that does not go completely through her brain and her hands. But she also is the chief officer of the company, running the business aspect as well. And so Christina to say she has her hands full is an understatement. She is probably the best time management person I've ever met.
Wow.
I think mothers learn this by, fire, that they don't get a lot of time to do things. And so Christina she's really shown me how to stay focused, and she's much better at it than I am. But basically, I go out, I'm mostly on set. Christina is almost exclusively post-production, because that is her strength, to take all the interviews and take all the footage and organize it on paper, and then also in the edit bay. And then so, we literally have a director-producer relationship in that manner. And I'm very lucky. I think being with her in a lot of cases is the reason that I have any success as a filmmaker, truthfully. And I say this, that I think most directors who work with the same producer would say the same thing I'm saying. It's very, very important. And we also have an incredibly talented team around us. A woman named Diane Carpenter, who's one of the founders of SOMM TV, who has a great story mind and pushes a lot of the films together, and same with Nadine Netman, who's a story producer as well. It's very lucky. I think what makes a good director is you hire people that are smarter than you and you listen to them. And so that's kind of what's gone on. But, you know, we do have 2 little kids, and I think they're more like me than my wife wishes, but but it's fun. You know, I'm going to look back at this and I think it's a very small operation in a fun way, that we're all family and we get a chance to fight, but we don't have a chance to stay mad at each other. Mm-hmm. You know, and creative stuff, you need to argue a bit to make things good, but you also need to respect the people that are in your space. And it's, you know, you have to draw the boundaries, of which, again, that's always a process.
That's true. Well, one thing we do need to talk about before we let you go is this new project that I'm seeing hints about on your Instagram feed, something to do with SOMM TV sparkling. Can you tell me about that?
Sparklers. Yes. I just got back from Oregon. We shot the first 4 episodes of it's a cooking competition show that is based around sparkling wine. So we have actually filmed. There are 2 producers in Italy, one in Piedmont, one in Franciacorta, one in the south of France in Limoux, 2 in Champagne, Krug and Ruinart, and then one in Oregon, Lytle Barnett. And I've never seen a show like this. So we have filmed it all over the world, and then the cooking competition portion takes place both in Oregon and then in Napa. And so it is a very intense cooking competition show focused on regional dishes that are from where these sparkling wines are from, and they have to use the wine in the cooking. And it has some of the greatest up-and-coming people in the show. But it's kind of a hybrid travel show, documentary, and also cooking competition. It's the first of many competition shows we have coming to SOMM TV. This one is going to be, oh my God, it's so intense and so fun. I've never been more tired. I am so tired. I just got back from filming it in Oregon. It was very brutal, but so fun. What a wonderful
And are
cast.
you loving it?
I am absolutely loving this. I mean, there are people you know for sure that are on our cast, like Megan Zobek, who's the winemaker at Burgess Cellars. Mm-hmm. She is just a genius. Miriam Ahmed, who was at the Culinary Institute of America. Yeah. George Walker, who runs Dwayne Wade Cellars. We have Matthew Kaner, who's a SOMM TV cast member and a big sommelier down here in Los Angeles, a restaurateur. And then Claire Copey, who is also a SOMM TV cast member and the beverage director at one of the best sushi restaurants in California called Sushi Note down here. And so the 5 of them are the competitors on the show. And it's, man, you know, wine people are competitive people. Let me tell you that much. Yeah, but I am loving it. It's such a dream to be able
that's
to
nice.
make
and
this
when
kind
can
of
we
stuff
expect to see that?
That comes late summer. So we still have a little bit more to film. We have one thing to film in Champagne, and then the final episodes, which, oh boy, the final episodes will be filmed in June. And so then late summer, it will release, and I will sleep for 2 weeks straight.
You know, I'm just kind of reeling, listening to everything you've got going on. You're so darn busy. I am incredibly grateful you took this time with us today. You know, I think with your work ethic, the productivity, the energy, and the passion that you put into everything, my goodness, you will never be a forgotten man, even if your company is Forgotten Man Films. We're grateful again for this time and getting to know you better, Jason, and I'm wishing you continued success with all of your endeavors.
Hey, the honor's mine. I'm so honored to be on the podcast, and it's you know, it's been very fun to talk to you guys.
Thank you so much. And, you know, thank you for bringing all these wonderful stories into our lives and for, you know, telling the stories behind the label. We love that. We love what you're doing and can't wait to see all these films coming out.
Oh, thank you. Well, I look forward to at some point here shortly having like in person being able to clink a glass with both of you.
We would love that. We would really love that.
All right, fantastic.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks again. And sip, sip, hooray, Jason.
Okay.
Cheers.
Thanks, ladies. Sip, sip, hooray.
Well, Mary Orland, Jason Wise is a force of nature. My goodness, the man is involved in so much and has a personal connection to everything he's doing. I mean, he's not just sending other people out on the road to film things. He's doing it. I am just stunned by his productivity.
I wish I had 1/10 of his energy and drive, but you can tell he's not only passionate, he's obsessed. and he's obsessed with storytelling, and we love storytelling. So what a great connection to have with him.
Absolutely. And I love that he just keeps finding new and interesting stories to tell in the wine world. And I mean, the fact that he's got a mystery thriller
I know,
connected to wine.
With a Ouija board.
Right.
So I can't wait to see that.
A cool character. So I'm glad we got a chance to visit with him. And I hope you, our listeners, enjoyed the conversation as well. And if you do enjoy our podcast, please share it with your friends. Tell them all about Sip Sip Hooray podcast.
That's right. You can find us on sipsiphooraypodcast.com. And there you'll see all the different podcast platforms that we broadcast on. So you can pick and choose, and whatever your favorite podcast platform is, please subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And while you're on our website, you can see all of our other episodes. We have some really super cool, super fun people you'll want to get to know.
Yes. And please, we would also invite you to follow us on social media. We are Sip Sip Hooray Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and Sip Sip Hooray 1 on Twitter.
That's right. And please tag us at Sip Sip Hooray Podcast as well. And we invite you to come back for another amazing episode. We've got a lot of exciting guests coming up, and we really thank you for joining us today. So Mary Babbitt, this has been awesome. Sip Sip Hooray to you.
Sip Sip Hooray to you, Mary Orland. Thanks so much, and cheers.
Cheers.